Shh. Don't make a sound in whatever you do. Prologue. The floorboards were cold beneath my palms. I pressed my cheek against the rough-hewn wood. My entire world shrunk to the space beneath my fated mate's massive desk. The air was thick with the scent of old leather, pine polish, and him, the sharp, metallic tang of power that was Alpha Cade. His body was a wall of heat in front of me, shielding me from the open room, his presence the only thing between me and a death I was supposed to have met 3 days ago. My lungs burned. I hadn't taken a full breath in what felt like hours. Thump, thump, thump. My heartbeat was a frantic drum against my ribs, so loud I was sure it would give us away. Then I heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A soft scuff of a boot on the stone hearth. I flinched, my muscles tightening into knots. A tiny, terrified sound tried to escape my throat, a whimper that would have been our death sentence. Instantly, Cade's hand was over my mouth. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't kind. It was hard, possessive, and absolute. His calloused palm clamped down, sealing my lips, his fingers digging into my jaw. The sheer size of his hand dwarfed my face, smelling of the night air, of leather, and of a raw, primal dominance that made my Omega instinct scream in both terror and submission. I froze, my eyes wide in the shadows. Shh, don't make a sound, in whatever you do. His voice wasn't even a whisper. It was a low rumble, a vibration I felt more in my chest than heard with my ears, moving from his body, through his arm, and into the hand that held me captive. A shadow moved in the sliver of light from the moon-drenched window. My blood turned to ice. It wasn't Cade. The shadow was lean, moving with a predator's fluid grace. It paused in the center of the den, a silhouette against the dying embers in the fireplace. The man, the wolf, was dressed in all black, and I could smell the sharp, oily scent of wolfsbane and silver. An assassin. He was in the den. He was in the Alpha's den. He must have slipped past the guards, a ghost in the stronghold. He believed Cade was here, alone and vulnerable. He believed the new, ruthless Alpha of the Shadowclaw Pack was finally undefended. The assassin took a step, then another, his head tilted as if listening. He was listening for a heartbeat, for a breath, for me. I squeezed my eyes shut, the pressure of Cade's hand the only thing keeping me anchored. I could feel the thunder of his heart, right beside me, a slow, steady, powerful beat. Unlike my own, it wasn't a rhythm of fear. It was a rhythm of pure, contained rage. I felt Cade shift, a silent movement that pressed me harder against the solid wood paneling of the desk. He was making himself a bigger shield, putting every inch of his muscled body between me and the killer. He was hiding me, his fated mate. He was hiding a survivor of the old regime. He was hiding the one person his own knew, brutal laws demanded he execute. The assassin drew a blade. The moonlight caught the silver, a cold, hungry flash in the darkness. He took a step toward the desk. He knows. Oh, gods, he knows. My body locked up. Cade's fingers tightened on my jaw, a silent, painful command. Stay still. The assassin stopped, not 5 feet from us. He sniffed the air. He was trying to catch a scent. My scent. The scent of an Omega. The scent of a traitor who should be dead. I prayed to a moon goddess I hadn't spoken to in years. Please, please, please. He stood there for an eternity. The silence was so heavy it was a physical weight, crushing my chest. Then, from far down the hall, a door slammed. A guard yelled something, his voice muffled by the thick stone walls. The assassin didn't hesitate. He flowed back toward the window, a whisper of movement, and was gone. He vanished into the night as quickly as he had appeared. I stayed frozen, not daring to believe it. My lungs were on fire. Cade didn't move for a full minute. His hand remained clamped over my mouth, his body a rigid wall of muscle. Only when the sounds of the guards grew closer, pounding down the hallway, did he finally let me go. His hand dropped, and I collapsed against the desk, dragging in a desperate, ragged breath that was half a sob. It felt like breathing for the first time. He. I stammered, my voice a broken rasp. Cade moved out from under the desk, rising to his full, intimidating height. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the window where the assassin had vanished. In the faint moonlight, I could see his hands were clenched into fists, his knuckles white. He wasn't shaking from fear. He was vibrating with a fury so violent it made the air in the room feel thin and cold. I know, his voice was a deadly growl. The den door burst open, and guards flooded in, their weapons drawn. Alpha, we detected a breach on the west wall. Cade turned to them, and his face was no longer the face of the male who had shielded me. It was the face of the ruthless Alpha who had conquered this pack. His eyes were chips of ice. He was in here, Cade snarled. He came through the window. Find him. Find him now. The guards scrambled, their faces pale with fear of their Alpha's wrath. They disappeared back into the hall, their shouts echoing. Cade didn't move. He just stared into the night. I was still huddled on the floor, shaking so hard my teeth chattered. I was the healer of the old pack. I was the Omega who was supposed to be dead. I was the one secret that could get us both killed. And the assassin, I realized with a fresh wave of sickness, had just confirmed his suspicion. He hadn't found the Alpha, but he had found proof of a weakness. He had smelled me. I hope you loved that prologue. If you're feeling that tension, just wait. Please show your support by subscribing to the channel and liking this video. It helps so much. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you don't miss Chapter 1. Now, let's find out how Anara got trapped in that den in the first place. Chapter 1. 3 days ago, I was supposed to die. My name is Anara, and I was the chief healer of the Silvermoon pack. That was the key word. Silvermoon was gone, swallowed whole in a single, brutal night of fire and dominance. We had been a pack of healers, of farmers, of families. We were not warriors. We never stood a chance. Alpha Cade, the new, self-styled leader of the Shadowclaw pack, had descended from the northern mountains like a winter storm. He was a rumor, a ghost story other alphas told their betas to keep them in line. A ruthless, lawless alpha who was carving a new territory out of the fractured packs in the Pacific Northwest. He wasn't a rumor. He was real. When his warriors breached our walls, our alpha, a kind old man named Thomas, had fallen in the first 5 minutes. The rest was just a takeover. Cade's law was simple and absolute. Join him or be broken. Any who held loyalty to the old alpha were considered traitors. And traitors were not given mercy. I hadn't been on the battlefield. I was in the clinic, a small stone building at the edge of the pack village, my hands covered in blood. I was trying to save a young warrior, a boy of 17 whose chest had been torn open. I was packing the wound with yarrow and gauze, my knuckles white with the effort, when the door to the clinic was kicked off its hinges. I froze. The sense of pine, cold steel, and an overwhelming wave of pure, undiluted alpha power flooded the room. It was suffocating. He filled the doorway. I had never seen Alpha Cade up close. He was a giant of a man, built not with the lean grace of our runners, but with the dense, brutal power of a berserker. He was dressed in dark leathers, and his black hair was pulled back from a face that looked like it had been carved from the mountain stone itself. But it was his eyes that held me. They weren't the warm brown or blue of my pack. They were a pale, striking gray, cold and sharp as a shard of ice. He looked at the dying boy on my cot, then at my bloody hands, then at my face. I was wearing my healer's apron, stained and dirty. My brown hair had fallen out of its braid, and I was trembling, but I stood frozen in place, a bloody rag still clutched in my hand. He didn't speak. He just looked at me. And the world stopped. It wasn't a thought. It wasn't a choice. It was a physical blow, a kick to the chest that knocked all the air from my lungs. An invisible, white-hot wire snapped tight between us, pulling my very soul toward his. Mate. The word exploded in my mind, A terrifying, impossible revelation. My fated mate. This butcher. This man who had just murdered my alpha and destroyed my home. I must have made a sound, a choked gasp, because his cold eyes narrowed. He took a step into the room, and I saw the moment it hit him, too. His broad shoulders tensed. His nostrils flared, and that icy gray gaze burned. It was no longer the look of a conqueror. It was the look of a wolf who had just found the one thing in the world he couldn't live without. And it disgusted him. I could see the war in his face. The pure, animalistic need fighting with the cold, hard logic of the alpha. "Get out," he snarled at the two warriors who had followed him in. They vanished instantly, terrified of his tone. He and I were alone, with only the gurgling breath of the dying boy between us. "No," he whispered. The word was raw, torn from his throat. He looked at me like I was a trap. "Please," I finally found my voice, and it was pathetic, thin, and reedy. I wasn't pleading for my life. I was pleading with the universe. "Please, no. You are of the old pack," he stated. His voice was deep, gravelly. It vibrated through my bones. I couldn't speak. I just nodded, my eyes filling with tears of terror and confusion. "You are a healer." I nodded again. His jaw clenched. "My law is absolute. All who serve the old regime must be removed. They are a threat to the new order." Removed. A clean, cold word for slaughter. He was going to kill me. His own fated mate. I watched him, my heart a leaden weight in my stomach. I saw his hand go to the hilt of the large knife at his hip. He was going to do it. He was going to cut the bond before it could even form, choosing his power, his law, over his own soul. It was the ruthless, practical thing to do. He took a step. I squeezed my eyes shut, a tear tracing a path through the grime on my cheek. I would not scream. I was the last of Silvermoon. I would not die screaming. I waited. The silence stretched. The only sound was the drip, drip, drip of blood from the cot onto the stone floor. When I finally opened my eyes, he was standing right in front of me. His hand was still on his knife, but he hadn't drawn it. He was staring at the tear track on my face, his expression one of pure, animalistic conflict. His chest rose and fell in a deep, controlled breath. He was fighting himself. The alpha versus the wolf. The man versus the mate. "What is your name?" he growled. "Anara." "Anara," he repeated, and my name on his lips sounded like a curse. He let go of his knife. Then, so fast I couldn't even react, his hand shot out and grabbed my arm. His grip was a steel band, bruising, possessive. He didn't pull me to him. He started dragging me out of the clinic. What are you doing?" I stumbled after him, my feet tangling in my apron. "Silence," he commanded. He hauled me through the chaos of my burning village. His warriors were everywhere, rounding up survivors, putting out fires. They saw him, their terrifying alpha, dragging a small, dirty Omega woman, and they averted their eyes. No one questioned him. He didn't take me to the holding pens where the others were being sorted. He didn't take me to the pyres. He dragged me straight through the village, up the long path to the alpha stronghold, the one place I had only been a few times to treat the old alpha. He kicked open the massive front doors. He dragged me up the grand staircase, his boots loud on the polished wood. He didn't stop until we were in his private den, the former alpha's den, now his. It was a huge, circular room at the top of the stronghold, all dark stone and massive wooden beams, with a commanding view of the entire territory. He threw me inside. I fell to the floor, skidding on a plush fur rug. I scrambled back, pressing myself against a towering bookshelf, my heart trying to beat its way out of my chest. He slammed the heavy oak door, the sound echoing like a gunshot. He turned the key in the lock, a loud, definitive click. Then he turned to me. He was breathing hard, that icy control finally cracking. His gray eyes were dark, swirling with a storm of rage and a raw, possessive hunger that terrified me more than his knife. "You will not leave this room," he snarled. What What are you going to do to me? I whispered, pulling my knees to my chest. You are a complication, he spat, pacing the room like a caged panther. He ran a hand through his hair, his frustration a palpable force. My beta, Gideon, from the old pack, he escaped. He's out there. I knew Gideon. He was a hard, cruel man, the true power behind our gentle Alpha Thomas. Gideon is building resistance, Cade continued, more to himself than to me. He is spreading word that I am a lawless butcher. I have set a new law. No survivors of the old regime. No split loyalties. And the first person I find, the first is my own. Fated. Mate. He said the words like they were poison on his tongue. You are my one secret, Anara. You are my one weakness. And if Gideon, or any of my own men, find out that I have broken my first law for an Omega healer, I will lose this pack before I have even secured it. So what now? I dared to ask. He stopped pacing and looked at me, huddled by his bookshelf. His gaze was intense, possessive, and cold all at once. Now, he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous growl. You are no longer Anara, the healer. You are no longer Silvermoon. You don't exist. You will stay in this den. You will make no sound. You will not be seen. I will bring you food when I can. You are a ghost. For how long? Until I have crushed Gideon. Until my rule is absolute, he said. Or until we are both discovered and killed. He stared at me for a long moment, and I saw a flicker of something, a deep, profound pain in his eyes. This bond, he whispered, his voice rough with an emotion I couldn't name. It is a curse. It has doomed us both. He then turned, unlocked the door, and left, locking it again from the outside. That was 3 days ago. For 3 days, I had lived in his den. I hid in his private bathroom or under his desk when servants came to clean. He came only at night, leaving a tray of food and water, his face a mask of stone. We didn't speak. The unwanted bond between us throbbed, a constant, painful reminder of our impossible situation. Until tonight. Tonight, the whispers of a secret weakness had finally reached the right ears. Gideon's assassin had come. And Alpha Cade, the ruthless tyrant, had broken his own laws, and then shielded me, his fated, forbidden mate, with his own body. Chapter 2. The silence that descended after the guards left was heavier than the one before. It was thick with unspoken fear, with the lingering adrenaline of the attack, and with the heavy, pulsing awareness between us. The immediate danger was gone. The assassin was no longer in the room, but the real danger was just beginning. I was still on the floor, my limbs numb and trembling. The shock was wearing off, replaced by a deep, bone-chilling cold. Cade stood by the window, a towering silhouette against the moonlit forest. He hadn't moved since his men left. He was a statue of controlled fury, his hands still clenched at his sides. I watched the corded muscles in his neck and shoulders, a roadmap of tension. You should check the locks, I whispered. My voice was hoarse, raw from being held in. He didn't turn. They won't get in that way again. He used the west wall. He's a shadow walker. One of Gideon's elite. His voice was a low growl, vibrating with a rage that was so potent it made my skin prickle. He was angry at the assassin, at his guards, at Gideon. And at me. I could feel it. I was the reason this happened. I slowly, painfully untangled my legs. My knees popped, and my ankles stung from being curled up for so long. I used the leg of the massive desk to pull myself to my feet, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the carved wood. He smelled me, I stated. It wasn't a question. Cade's head snapped toward me. In the dim light, his gray eyes were bright, feral. Yes. So he knows. He knows I have a weakness. Cade bit out the word, his lip curling in a snarl. He knows I'm hiding something, or someone. He will report back to Gideon. They will be back. They'll send more than one next time. My stomach hollowed out. This was my fault. His entire, brutal strategy depended on him being seen as an untouchable, unfeeling force. A man with no weaknesses to exploit. And I was a walking, breathing, omega-scented weakness, living in the very heart of his stronghold. "You should have killed me," I whispered, the words tearing at my throat. "In the clinic. You should have killed me then." He moved so fast I didn't even have time to flinch. 1 second he was by the window, the next he was in front of me, his hands slamming onto the desk on either side of my body. He caged me in, his face inches from mine. I was trapped between the solid wood at my back and the solid wall of his chest. The sheer power rolling off him was terrifying. It was the same dominance from the clinic, but amplified, raw and unfiltered. "Do not, ever, say that again," he growled, his voice a low vibration that shook my very bones. His proximity was overwhelming. I could see the faint stubble on his jaw, the hard line of his mouth, the way his gray eyes swirled with a storm of violence and a deep, aching need that mirrored the pull in my own gut. The bond between us, which had been a dull throb for 3 days, now flared to life, a searing, painful fire. He was my mate, and he hated it. "It's the truth," I forced myself to say, even as I trembled. "I am a threat to you. I am a complication. You are mine," he snarled, the word possessive, primal. It wasn't a term of endearment. It was a statement of fact. A claim. Mine to protect. Mine to hide. Mine to deal with. Not Gideon's. Not his to kill. I stared up at him, my heart hammering against my ribs. He was a hypocrite. He was a tyrant who demanded absolute loyalty, who executed traitors for a whisper of dissent, yet he was breaking his own primary law for a woman he didn't even want. "Why?" I choked out. "Why are you doing this? You hate this. You hate me. Hate you." His laugh was a short, bitter sound. "I don't know what I feel for you, Anara. You are the one thing in this world that can destroy everything I've built. You're the moon pulling an ocean I didn't know I had. I look at you, and the alpha in me says liability. He says, cut the threat. He says, a leader cannot have this weakness." He leaned in closer, his breath fanning my cheek, warm and scented with something wild. I had to tilt my head back to keep looking at him. "But the wolf," he whispered, his voice dropping, becoming rougher, more animalistic. "The wolf says mate. The wolf says protect. The wolf says mine. The wolf doesn't care about laws. Or packs. Or Gideon. The wolf says he will burn this entire continent to the ground to keep you safe." My breath hitched. His confession hung in the air, raw and dangerous. He was at war with himself, and I was the battlefield. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to hate him for what he did to my pack. But in this moment, trapped against his desk, with his ice-gray eyes burning into me, all I felt was the devastating, terrifying pull of the bond. He was my conqueror. He was my protector. He was a monster. And he was my mate. I saw the fight in his eyes, the man warring with the beast. And then, for a second, the alpha lost. His gaze dropped to my mouth. I saw his pupils dilate. The anger in his posture didn't lessen, but it was joined by a different kind of hunger. A primal hunger. "Cade." I breathed his name, a plea. I didn't even know what I was pleading for. For him to stop? For him to continue? My voice, my scent, my fear, it was too much for him. He made a sound, a low growl deep in his chest, and then his mouth was on mine. It wasn't a kiss. It was a conquest. It was a brutal, desperate claiming. His lips were hard, unforgiving, moving against mine with a rough possessiveness that stole my breath. It was the kiss of a man who was furious at his own need, who was trying to devour the one thing that made him weak. One of his hands left the desk and tangled in my hair, gripping the back of my head, holding me in place for his assault. I was too shocked to respond. My hands were splayed on his chest, and I could feel the frantic pounding of his heart, a wild rhythm that matched my own. And then, just as quickly as it started, He tore himself away. He stumbled back, wiping his mouth with the back of his hand as if he'd just tasted poison. He was breathing heavily, his chest heaving. Get in the bathroom," he commanded, his voice hoarse. He wouldn't look at me. He stalked to the other side of the room, putting the massive desk between us, his hands gripping its edge until his knuckles turned white. I scrambled away, my lips tingling, my entire body shaking with a confusing mix of terror and a new, traitorous heat. I fled into the small, adjoining bathroom, my prison within a prison, and shut the door, leaning my forehead against the cool marble. I could hear him in the den, pacing. I heard the sound of glass smashing against stone, followed by a low, guttural roar of frustration. He was losing control. My fingers went to my lips. They were tender, bruised. He had kissed me like he hated me. He had kissed me like he owned me. I slid down the wall to the floor, pulling my knees to my chest, just as I had been under the desk. The assassin had been the first threat. But the man on the other side of this door, he was the second. And I didn't know which one terrified me more. I stayed in that bathroom for hours. I listened to him pace. I heard him speaking in low, urgent tones, likely to his guards over a phone. He was furious, giving orders, locking down the stronghold. Finally, just before dawn, I heard the main den door open and close. He was gone. I waited until the sun was fully up, its bright, cool-hour light streaming through the bathroom's small, frosted window. My stomach rumbled, a painful reminder that I hadn't eaten since the small piece of bread Cade had left for me yesterday. Trembling, I cracked open the bathroom door. The den was empty. But it was not as I'd left it. A heavy oak chair had been thrown, its wood splintered against the wall. The glass he'd smashed was from a decanter, its amber liquid and shattered crystal littering the stone hearth. And on the desk, the one he had pinned me against, sat a tray. It held a pitcher of fresh water, a steaming cup of what smelled like broth, a hunk of bread, and a piece of cheese. My eyes filled with tears. He was a monster. He was a tyrant. He was a man who kissed with a bruising, hateful anger. And he was a man who, in the midst of his fury and the chaos of an assassination attempt, had still remembered that his mate needed to eat. Chapter 3. Life in the den became a strange, suffocating routine. I was a ghost in Cade's world, a secret prisoner in a gilded cage. The den was massive, larger than my entire cottage back in Silvermoon. One wall was all stone, dominated by the huge fireplace, now cleaned of the shattered glass. Another wall was a sweeping curve of floor-to-ceiling windows, but Cade kept the heavy, velvet drapes drawn day and night, plunging the room into a perpetual twilight. The only light came from a few dim lamps. The bright, natural daylight the prompt had mentioned was a world away, a taunt from behind the thick fabric. The third wall was my favorite, a towering library of shelves crammed with books. Ancient leather-bound volumes on pack law, modern thrillers, histories of the first wolves, even poetry. It seemed the ruthless alpha Cade was a reader. I spent my days in silence. I read his books, my fingers tracing the spines. I learned about him. His notes in the margins were sharp, analytical, and surprisingly insightful. I ate the food he left for me, always delivered just before dawn, long after I'd retreated to the bathroom for the night. I'd emerge in the morning to find the tray and a fresh pitcher of water, like offerings from a silent, angry god. We never spoke. After that night, the night of the assassin, the night of that kiss, he avoided me completely. If he needed to be in the den during the day, a sharp, single knock would echo on the door. It was my signal to vanish. I would slip into the marble bathroom, closing the door silently, and wait. I would sit on the cold floor listening. I heard his voice, deep and commanding, as he held meetings. The patrols on the west wall are a disgrace, I heard him snarl one afternoon, his voice muffled by the door. Gideon's man walked right in. I want sensors. I want sentries. I want it so a rabbit can't get through without me knowing. Alpha, another voice said, hesitant. The cost. The cost, Cade's voice dropped to a lethal low, is my life. And your lives. Do it. There was a scramble of agreement. I learned more about his rule from those one-sided conversations. He was a brutal strategist, but he wasn't senseless. He was rebuilding the pack's infrastructure, reinforcing its weak points, demanding excellence. He was harsh, but he was also effective. My old pack had been kind, but we had been weak. Cade was building something strong, something that could survive. I hated him for it. I admired him for it. The two emotions twisted inside me, a confusing, painful knot. And always the bond. It was a low, humming wire in the back of my mind. A constant awareness of him. I could feel his moods, even from rooms away. I felt his anger like a cold pressure. I felt his frustration like a headache. And sometimes, late at night, when he was in the den alone, working at his desk while I pretended to be asleep on the cot he'd moved into the bathroom, I felt his loneliness. It was a vast, aching emptiness that mirrored my own. It was the feeling of being the only one of your kind. The Alpha on his throne, the Omega in her prison. Both of us completely, devastatingly alone, separated by a single wall. One night, I woke from a nightmare. I was back in the clinic, the boy was dying on the table, and Cade was walking toward me, his silver knife raised. I sat bolt upright on the cot, a scream trapped in my throat, my body slick with cold sweat. My gasp must have been louder than I thought. From the other room, I heard his chair scrape back. Anara. His voice was low, rough with sleep. I froze. He had never used my name since that first day. Are you all right? He called, his voice closer now. He was at the bathroom door. I couldn't speak. I was trembling too hard. The doorknob turned. My heart leaped into my throat. He was coming in. He opened the door slowly. The dim light from the den silhouetted him, making him look even larger. He was in his shirt sleeves, his hair undone from its usual tie, falling in dark waves around his shoulders. He looked less like an alpha and more like just a man. His gray eyes found me on the cot, huddled in the thin blanket, my eyes wide with lingering terror. His face softened. The hard lines around his mouth eased, and the ice in his eyes melted, replaced by a look of concern. It was so unexpected, it hurt more than his anger. A nightmare, he stated. It wasn't a question. I just nodded, pulling the blanket tighter around my chin. He stood there for a long moment, one hand braced on the doorframe. He looked like he wanted to say something, to come closer. The bond between us flared, a sudden, desperate pull from his side. A desire to comfort. It was so strong, I felt it like a physical touch. He visibly fought it. His jaw clenched. The alpha mask slammed back into place. It was just a dream, he said, his voice flat, all emotion gone. Go back to sleep. He shut the door, leaving me alone in the dark again, my heart aching with a new, more confusing pain. The next day, the near discovery happened. It was mid-afternoon. Cade was in a meeting in the main hall, or so I thought. I had taken the risk of leaving the bathroom to find a new book. The silence of the den was my companion, and I was lost in the shelves, my back to the room, my fingers grazing the spines. I was reading the titles, trying to decide between a history of the first alphas or a tattered copy of Moby Dick. I heard the click of the den door unlocking. My blood turned to ice. Cade always knocked. Always. I didn't even have time to turn. I just froze, my hand still in the air, my body hidden by the deep shadow of the towering shelf. Alpha Cade, a voice called out. It was a male voice, one I didn't recognize. I held my breath. My heart was a frantic bird in my chest. Don't move. Don't breathe. Be a ghost. Cade? Are you in here? I heard heavy footsteps enter the room. I could smell him, a sharp scent of cedar and wolf. This was a high-ranking warrior. Oh gods, oh gods. I was trapped. The bookshelf was in an alcove. The bathroom was across the entire room. If I moved, he'd see me. I know you're in here, the man said, his voice laced with a strange, almost playful suspicion. The guards said you never left. What are you doing, my friend? Brooding in the dark? The footsteps grew closer. He was walking toward the desk. He was only feet from the alcove where I was hiding. I pressed myself back against the wall, my nails digging into the wood. I squeezed my eyes shut. He's going to see me. He's going to smell me. Cade will be ruined. He'll kill us both. Seriously, Cade, the man sighed. I heard him sit in the heavy leather chair behind the desk. Cade's chair. You can't keep this up. The pack needs to see you. You've been a ghost since the takeover. You hole yourself up in this tomb. It's not healthy. And it's making Gideon look right. They're starting to whisper. My heart pounded. Who is this man? He spoke to Cade like an equal. And the man continued, his voice dropping. It smells strange in here. What is that? It's almost sweet. My scent. My omega scent. I was going to be sick. He smelled me. It was over. The chair creaked as he leaned back. Like flowers. And honey. It's driving my wolf crazy. Do you have a woman in here, Cade? His tone was teasing, but I could hear the sharp edge of curiosity underneath. I heard him stand up. The footsteps started coming toward me. Toward the bookshelf. What do you have hidden over here? He mused. 1 step. 2 steps. He was right at the edge of the alcove. I could see his shadow. The main den door slammed open, crashing against the wall. What do you think you are doing, Riker? Cade's voice was not a growl. It was a blade of ice. It was the most dangerous sound I had ever heard. The man, Riker, froze. I saw his shadow stop. Cade, I was just looking for you. The guards. The guards, Cade's voice was dangerously soft as he entered the room, were told no one enters my den. Not you. Not anyone. I have the sensor reports on Gideon. I thought you'd want them, Riker said, his voice losing all its confidence. He was Cade's beta, I realized. Or his second in command. You thought you would bypass my explicit command. You thought you would walk into my private chambers. And you thought you would, Snoop, Cade snarled. I was not Snoop. Get out, Cade commanded. Cade, listen, about the scent in here. I said. Get out. The sheer, killing intent in Cade's voice was absolute. I heard Riker's sharp intake of breath. He was a powerful wolf, but Cade was the alpha. Fine, Riker said, his voice tight with anger and offense. But whatever you're hiding in here, Cade, it's a mistake. Secrets rot a pack from the inside out. You taught me that. The footsteps retreated. The door shut, this time softly, leaving a heavy, ringing silence in its wake. I didn't move. I was too terrified. I waited, my body rigid. I heard Cade walk, not to his desk, but straight to the alcove. He stepped into the shadows. He didn't say a word. He just looked at me, my face pale, my eyes wide with terror. His expression was impossible to read. It was a mask of cold, hard stone. For a second, I thought he was going to hit me. I thought he was going to blame me. He just stood there, his chest rising and falling. The bond between us was screaming, a high-pitched whine of danger, danger, danger. Then he did the last thing I expected. He reached out, his hand moving slowly, as if not to startle me. He tucked a loose strand of my hair, which had fallen in my face, back behind my ear. His fingers were rough, calloused, but his touch was so gentle it made my knees weak. This is not safe anymore, he said, his voice flat, all the anger gone, replaced by a cold, hard certainty. Riker is loyal to me, but he is not loyal to my secrets. He thinks I'm compromised. He's right. He let his hand fall. Gideon's assassin smelled you. Now my own beta has smelled you. The secret is out. It's only a matter of time. What are we going to do? I whispered, my voice trembling. He looked at me, and his gray eyes were filled with a bleak, cold fire. Gideon wants a weakness, he said, more to himself than to me. I'll give him one. But I'll do it on my terms. He turned and walked to the door. Cade, what are you doing? Pack your things, he said over his shoulder. I don't have anything, I replied, confused. He paused, his hand on the doorknob. Tonight, he said, I'm moving you. We can't stay here. He looked back at me, and his expression was that of the ruthless alpha, the strategist, the king. He wants to expose my secret? Cade's lip curled in a wolfish snarl. Fine. I'll expose it myself. I'm done hiding you, Anara. I'm done hiding my mate. Chapter 4. The hours after Riker's visit were the most tense yet. Cade left me alone again, but the den no longer felt like a sanctuary, however cold. It was a trap that was closing in. Riker knew. The assassin knew. The secret was a living, breathing thing, and it was choking us both. I tried to read, but the words blurred on the page. I paced the room, my footsteps silent on the thick fur rugs. I kept replaying Cade's final words. I'm done hiding my mate. What did that mean? He wasn't just going to move me. This was something more. This was a tactical shift. He was a strategist, and he'd just been cornered. A cornered wolf doesn't just run. It attacks. My fear was a cold, coiling knot in my belly, but beneath it, something else was stirring. A strange, traitorous flicker of hope. He had called me his mate. Not his weakness, not his complication, not his prisoner. His mate. He'd said it with a snarl, true, but he'd said it. He was claiming me, not just with a kiss of anger, but with a public declaration. I was terrified of what that meant. A wolfless, barren omega from the slaughtered pack, as the new alpha's chosen? The pack would never accept it. Not Cade's warriors, who valued only strength. Not the survivors of Silvermoon, who would see me as the ultimate traitor, sleeping with the man who had destroyed us. I was a walking impossibility. The sun began to set. The cool-hour tones Cade preferred in his den grew darker, the shadows stretching and deepening. The mood was heavy Gothic. It felt like the calm before a devastating storm. The lock on the den door clicked. My head snapped up. He entered. He wasn't in his usual leather armor or casual shirt sleeves. He was dressed for war. He wore black cargo pants, combat boots, and a simple black t-shirt that stretched tight across his impossibly broad chest and shoulders. A knife was strapped to his thigh, and he was shrugging into a shoulder holster. My breath caught. Cade? What's happening? Gideon's made his move, he said, his voice clipped and all business. He didn't look at me. He was checking the clip on his handgun, his movements economical and deadly. The sensors on the west wall were just tripped. A dozen, maybe more. Not a single assassin this time. He's sending a war party. My blood ran cold. Here? To the stronghold? No, Cade snapped the clip back into place. He's smarter than that. He's not attacking me. He's attacking the pack's weakest point. The old clinic. He's going after the medical supplies. I frowned, confused. But why? It's just herbs and bandages. Cade finally looked at me, his gray eyes like chips of flint. It's not about the supplies, Anara. It's a test. He's probing my defenses. And he's sending a message. To you. To me? You were the healer. The clinic was your territory. He's burning your past to the ground. He's drawing you out. Or he holstered the weapon. He's hoping I'll be stupid enough to go myself, to defend a worthless building, and he can ambush me. Are you going? I whispered. No. I'm sending Riker and my main guard. They'll handle it. Gideon has underestimated how strong our defenses are now. He grabbed a dark canvas duffel bag from his closet. He thinks I'm distracted. He thinks my attention is divided. He's right, but not in the way he thinks. He tossed the bag onto the bed in the main room. I hadn't even known there was a bed. It had been hidden in an alcove, much like the library. We're leaving. Leaving? Now? While the pack is under attack. It's the perfect cover, he said, his voice urgent. All eyes are on the clinic. Riker, my beta, is occupied. The sentries are all watching the west wall. No one is watching the alpha. He stalked over to me, grabbing my arm. His grip was firm, not bruising this time, but urgent. We're going to the one place Gideon would never think to look. Where? Cade's mouth tightened. The old alpha's safe room. It's a bunker, built into the mountain under the stronghold. Not even Riker knows about it. Only the alpha. He was taking me to a place of ultimate safety, of ultimate trust. He pulled me toward the door. Stay close. Don't make a sound. It was a repeat of the assassin's night, but this time, we were the intruders in our own home. He cracked the den door, his head moving, listening. The hallway was empty. The stronghold was eerily quiet, all the activity focused on the breach miles away. Now, he whispered. He pulled me into the hall, and we moved. He was silent for such a big man, his boots making no sound on the stone floors. I felt like a leaf pulled in his wake, my own lighter footsteps covered by his. We didn't go down the main stairs. He led me to a narrow, dark hallway I had never seen, hidden behind a tapestry depicting a great white wolf howling at the moon. Service stairs, he murmured. We descended, down and down, into the cold, damp air of the stronghold's foundation. The air grew cooler, and the only light came from small, caged bulbs set into the stone. It smelled like earth and old secrets. The bond between us was a live wire. I could feel his heightened senses, his focus. He was a predator in his element, every muscle coiled, ready to strike. He was protecting me and the primal, animalistic part of my Omega nature, a part one never even knew existed, reveled in it. It was terrifying to feel such a thing. To feel safe with the most dangerous man I had ever met. At the bottom of the stairs was a heavy steel door. It looked ancient. Cade pulled a key from around his neck, one I'd never seen, and unlocked it. He pushed the door open, revealing a short, dark tunnel. In here. I stepped inside, and he followed, locking the door behind us. He hit a switch, and dim, modern lights flickered on, revealing a room that was the exact opposite of his den. His den was a statement of power. This was a statement of survival. It was small, concrete, and brutally functional. A cot. A desk with complex radio equipment. Shelves stacked high with sealed containers of food, water, and medical supplies. It was a bunker, designed for a siege. "You'll be safe here," he said, his voice echoing slightly in the small space. "For how long?" "Until the clinic fight is over. Until Riker reports back." "Maybe a day," he said, dropping the duffel bag. "And you?" I asked, turning to him. "Are you staying?" He looked at me, and the hard, strategic mask wavered. For the first time, I saw the man behind the alpha again. The one who had looked at me in the bathroom after my nightmare. He looked tired. "Yes," he said, his voice rough. I can't leave you alone. Not tonight. The bond, it's too strong. My wolf won't let me." He was admitting it. Admitting he was tied to me, not just by law, but by an instinct he couldn't control. We stood there, just looking at each other in the harsh, artificial light. The weight of everything we weren't saying hung between us. The kiss. The attack. The fated, terrible bond. "Why?" I finally asked, the question I'd been holding for days. "Why me? A wolfless Omega. A barren healer. I'm nothing. I'm the opposite of everything you value. Why would the moon goddess curse you with me?" Cade's expression hardened, but not in anger. It was in a deep, painful certainty. "Do you think I don't ask myself that every night?" he said, his voice low. "I built my power on being ruthless. On being strong. On having no emotional ties. I took this pack because I was stronger, and my law was absolute. I saw love as a weakness. I saw mates as a liability." He took a step closer. "And then I walked into that clinic, and I saw you. And you were everything I despised. You were from the old pack. You were weak. You were an Omega. And I looked at you." His voice broke, just for a second. I looked at you and my wolf, the beast I have kept chained inside me, the part of me that I use for war and nothing else. He stood up and said, mine. He didn't ask. He didn't care about my laws. He just claimed you. He was close now, so close I could feel the heat radiating from his body. You think you're weak, Anara? He whispered, his gray eyes searching my face. You're the only thing in this world that has ever brought me to my knees. You're the only one who has ever made the alpha and the wolf agree. You're not my weakness. You're my strength. I couldn't breathe. This confession was more intimate, more devastating than his kiss. But Gideon, the pack. Gideon is a symptom, Cade said, his gaze intense. The disease is my own hypocrisy. Riker was right. Secrets rot a pack. I've been trying to hide you, to keep my alpha self and my mate self separate. He reached out and, just as he had in the den, he tucked my hair behind my ear. His touch was electric. He's wrong about one thing, Cade murmured. I'm not compromised. I'm focused. I know exactly what I'm fighting for now. It's not just a territory. It's not just a title. His hand moved from my hair, his rough thumb tracing the line of my jaw, sending shivers down my spine. It's for you. And this time, when he leaned down and kissed me, it wasn't anger. It wasn't a conquest. It was a promise. His lips were firm, but this time, they were searching, not demanding. He kissed me with a desperate, pent-up tenderness that shattered my defenses. All the fear, all the loneliness, all the confusion, it melted away, replaced by the white-hot flare of the bond. I found my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer. My body, my omega soul, which had been dormant and broken, finally recognized its other half. I kissed him back, a silent, desperate answer. A high-pitched beep cut through the air. We broke apart, both breathing heavily. Cade's eyes were dark, his pupils blown wide. He looked at the radio on the desk. That's Riker's signal, he said, his voice thick. He crossed to the radio and picked up the receiver. Report. Riker's voice crackled through the speaker, strained and full of adrenaline. Alpha. It was a decoy. The clinic, it was a feint. They sent a small team, we routed them, but it was a trap. Cade's body went rigid. What are you saying, Riker? Gideon wasn't there. Alpha, the main gates are breached. He drew us away. He's at the stronghold. He's coming for you. Cade and I locked eyes across the room. Gideon hadn't been testing a weakness. He'd been creating an opening. He thinks I'm in the den, Cade said, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. We're coming back, Alpha, but it'll be 10 minutes at least. Riker yelled. Lock down the stronghold, Cade commanded into the radio. And Riker, you were right. I've had a secret. Now I'm ordering you to protect it. Go to my den. There is a steel door in the floor, behind the tapestry. You will guard it with your life. You will let no one in. Do you understand? Alpha, what? Do you understand me, Beta? Yes, Alpha. With my life. The radio clicked off. Cade turned to me. The tender mate was gone. The Alpha was back. He's coming for me, he said. He's coming to the den. He thinks I'm trapped. But Riker will be there. The door is steel. Gideon is a desperate man, Cade said, checking his weapon again. And he's not alone. He'll have his best. Riker's men can't hold them off for long. What are you going to do? I whispered, my heart in my throat. I'm going to end this, he said. He grabbed the duffel bag and pulled out a long, silver-edged combat knife. I've been hiding. I've been running. No more. Cade, no. You can't. Stay here. We're safe here. He looked at me, and his gray eyes were full of a terrible, beautiful fire. I told you I was done hiding my mate. I am the alpha of this pack. I will not be hunted in my own home. I will not hide in a bunker while my beta fights for a secret. He stalked to the steel door. You are going to kill him, I said, a cold realization dawning. I am going to break him, Cade corrected, his hand on the handle. I'm going to show the pack and Gideon and you What happens when someone threatens what is mine? He turned the handle. Cade, wait! I cried out. He paused, looking back at me, his face a mask of primal fury. I didn't know what to say. Be safe. Don't go. I'm scared. You'll be safe here, he said, his voice softening for just a fraction of a second. Don't open this door. For anyone. Not even me. Wait for Riker's all-clear signal. The code is Silvermoon. My pack. He'd made my old pack's name his safety code. My eyes filled with tears. Be safe. He gave me one last, hard look. A look of possession. A look of promise. Then he was gone, locking the door from the outside, leaving me alone in a concrete box, my heart pounding, my soul screaming for a man I was supposed to hate. Chapter 5. The silence of the bunker was absolute. It was a solid, crushing weight. There were no windows, no drafts, no muffled sounds from the stronghold. There was only the low, electronic hum of the radio equipment and the frantic, suffocating beat of my own heart. I was safe. Cade had said so. This room was a fortress. But I had never felt more terrified in my entire life. I was no longer a prisoner in his den. I was a prisoner in his tomb. I paced the small, concrete-walled room 5 steps one way, 6 steps the other. I touched the sealed containers of food. I ran my hand over the cold steel of the desk. This was Cade's final contingency. A place to protect what mattered most, built by the Alpha before him. And he had put me here. My mind raced, replaying every second of the last hour. Gideon's trap. The decoy at the clinic. Riker's voice, strained with panic. And Cade. Cade's face as he left. It wasn't just anger. It was liberation. He was a strategist, yes, but he was also a wolf, an alpha. He had been forced to hide, to skulk in his own home, to break his own laws. Gideon hadn't just threatened his life, he had threatened his pride. Now, Cade was unleashed. I am going to show the pack what happens when someone threatens what is mine. I shivered, wrapping my arms around myself. I was his. The thought should have repulsed me. He was the destroyer of my home. But the bond, that fiery, undeniable wire, hummed with a fierce, possessive pride. My mate was going to war for me. I had to know what was happening. I stared at the radio, my heart in my throat. It was my only link to the world above. Was it one way? Or could I? I crept closer, my fingers tracing the dials and switches. It was complex, military grade. I didn't know how to use it. But there was a scan button. My hand trembled as I pressed it. The radio crackled to life, a burst of static that made me jump. It began to cycle through frequencies, short bursts of garbled voices, static, and then. 3rd floor. He's moving toward the West Wing. All units converge. It was Riker's voice. He was alive. My knees went weak with relief, and I sank into the desk chair, my eyes glued to the speaker. Gideon's with him, another voice yelled, the sound distant and tinny. He's got at least 4 of his elite. They're cutting through us. Hold the line. Riker roared. The Alpha is. The transmission broke up. The Alpha is where? My hand gripped the edge of the desk. I listened, my entire being focused on that small black box. For minutes, there was nothing but static and panicked, overlapping shouts I couldn't understand. Where is he? I heard Riker again. We can't get a visual. Cade was hiding. He was using his knowledge of the stronghold, moving like a ghost. He was hunting the hunters. Then, a new sound came through the radio. It wasn't a voice. It was a scream. A high, terrified shriek of a man in mortal agony. It was cut off with a sickening, wet crunch. I clapped a hand over my own mouth, my stomach heaving. Man down. Man down, a voice shrieked. Gods, his throat. He tore his throat out. That wasn't Gideon. Riker bellowed. Where did it come from? Cade. He was fighting. Not with his gun. With his hands. With his teeth. I could feel him suddenly. The bond, which had been a dull throb, flared. I could feel his rage, a hot, coiling inferno. I could feel his adrenaline, a sharp, metallic taste in the back of my own throat. He was close. He was right above me. There. A burst of what sounded like gunfire echoed through the speaker, deafeningly loud. He's in the main hall. He's not even hiding. Riker's voice was full of disbelief. My blood ran cold. Cade had drawn them out. He was making his stand. Gideon. Cade's voice. It boomed through the radio, so loud and full of power it seemed to shake the very air in the bunker. It was the Alpha's command, a sound that forced every wolf who heard it to their knees. You dare to hunt me in my own house? Cade roared. You dare to threaten what is mine? Face me, coward. The radio went silent. No one dared to speak over the Alpha. I could picture it perfectly. The grand main hall of the stronghold, the moonlight streaming in through the high windows, just like in Cade's den. Cade, standing alone, a warrior king. And Gideon, the usurper, trapped. You have a traitor with you, Cade. Gideon's voice finally came, high and strained with hatred. We all smelled her. The Omega from the old pack. You broke your own law. You are unfit. You have no honor. He's telling everyone. He's exposing me. My face flushed with shame and fear. I heard Cade laugh. It was not a sound of humor. It was a cold, terrifying sound. Honor. Cade's voice was dangerously soft now. You speak to me of honor? You, who sends assassins to kill in the dark? You, who uses decoys to slaughter men? You, who abandoned your own pack to save your skin? I am saving the pack from you. Gideon shrieked. You are nothing. Cade roared. And she, Anara, is everything. You think she is my weakness? She is the match that lights the fire. You think I am compromised? I am complete. You should have run, Gideon. You should have stayed in the shadows. But you came into my home. You came for my mate. There was a new sound. A sound that made my blood sing and my skin crawl. It was the sound of bones breaking. Of a body changing. It was a sound I had only read about, but never heard. He's shifting. A guard whispered over the radio, his voice full of awe and terror. Cade was transforming. Not in the woods, not under the full moon, but right there in the main hall, in a display of pure, untamed power. A roar tore through the radio, a sound that was not human. It was a sound of primal fury, of an alpha wolf defending his territory and his mate. It was the most terrifying and beautiful sound I had ever heard. Then, there was only screaming. The battle was short, brutal, and decisive. I didn't need to see it. I could hear it. The sounds of men being thrown, the crunch of bones, the snarls of a beast that was far superior to any wolf in that hall. Cade wasn't just an alpha. He was the Alpha. I listened as Riker's men, who had at first been fighting Gideon's warriors, scrambled to get out of the way of their own Alpha, who was now a force of nature, a black-furred demon of vengeance. He was tearing Gideon's elite team apart. The screams faded, replaced by whimpers. And then silence. A heavy, panting silence. Alpha. Riker's voice was shaky, full of fear and reverence. I heard the wet, heavy sound of the shift in reverse. The cracking of bones reforming. A low, pained groan. It's done. Cade's voice was human again, but rough, hoarse. Gideon? Here, Alpha. Gideon's voice was a wet gurgle. He was alive. Barely. Good, Cade panted. I want the pack to see him. Riker. Get everyone. Alpha. Get every member of this pack. The warriors. The servants. The Silver Moon survivors. Wake them up. Drag them from their beds. I want them in the main hall. Now. Cade, what are you doing? I whispered at the radio, my heart pounding. Alpha, they're civilians. Riker protested. That is an order, Beta. Cade roared. I am done with secrets. I am done with whispers. They will all see what happens to traitors. And they will all. He paused, his breath ragged. They will all meet their new Luna. My blood turned to ice. No. No, no, no. He wasn't just killing Gideon. He was making a statement. He was going to bring me out. He was going to force the pack to see me, standing next to him, covered in the blood of their former beta. I scrambled back from the radio, my hand over my mouth. This was his plan. To reveal me. To force them to accept me, not as a healer, not as a gentle Omega, but as the mate of the monster who had just slaughtered his enemy. He was binding me to his power, to his violence. I looked at the heavy steel door. I was safe in here. He had told me to wait. I could stay here. I could wait until it was all over. But I knew I couldn't. If I stayed hidden, if I cowered in this bunker while he presented me in name only, I would forever be the Alpha's weakness. The hidden traitor. The secret he was ashamed of. But if I walked out? If I stood by his side, with Gideon bleeding at our feet? I'm done hiding. His words echoed in my head. I am the Alpha of this pack. I will not be hunted in my own home. And I would not be a ghost in my own life. My terror was a physical, sickening thing. My whole body screamed at me to stay, to hide. But the bond was pulling me. It was a desperate, aching need to be at his side. He was my mate. And he was hurt. He was claiming me. And I had to claim him. My hand was shaking so hard I could barely stand. I took a deep breath. I walked to the steel door. I placed my hand on the cold, unforgiving metal. He told me not to open it. He told me to wait for the code. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. I would not be his weakness. I would be his queen. I turned the heavy, unlocked handle. He hadn't locked me in, I realized. He had just shut the door and stepped out into the cold, dark tunnel, walking toward the chaos, toward the blood, toward my fated mate. Chapter 6. The short walk from the bunker to the main hall felt like a lifetime. The service stairs were cold, and the only sound was the frantic thumping of my own heart. I could smell it before I saw it, the sharp, coppery tang of fresh blood. My Omega instincts were screaming at me to run, to go back to the safety of the concrete room. Danger. Death. Wolf. But the bond was a fiery cable, pulling me forward, dragging me toward him. I reached the top of the stairs, pushing open the heavy tapestry. The main hall was a war zone. The moonlight streamed in, just as I'd imagined, illuminating the scene in a cold, blue-white light. The air was thick with the scent of blood and the animalistic musk of shifted wolves. Cade's pack members, hundreds of them, were lining the walls, their faces a mixture of terror, confusion, and awe. My old pack, the Silvermoon survivors, were huddled in a group, their eyes wide. In the center of the hall, Cade's elite guard, led by Riker, stood over the broken bodies of Gideon's war party. And at the front, near the massive, carved doors, stood Alpha Cade. He was bare-chested, his pants and boots spattered in blood. His body was slick with sweat, his chest heaving as he fought to control his breathing. His black hair was wild, and his gray eyes, they were glowing. They were the eyes of the wolf, feral and triumphant. At his feet, Gideon was curled in a broken heap, alive but only just. He was clutching his side, blood pouring between his fingers. No one spoke. The entire pack was held captive by the sheer, brutal power radiating from their alpha. And then I stepped out from behind the tapestry. A collective gasp went through the hall. Every single eye snapped to me. I stood there, a small, wolfless Omega in a simple linen shift, my bare feet silent on the cold stone. I felt like a single, pale moth in a room full of predators. Cade's head whipped around. His gray, glowing eyes widened. The primal, wolfish rage in his face faltered, replaced by a raw, naked shock. Anara, he breathed my name. It was a prayer and a curse. What are you doing? I told you to wait. She's here. Gideon choked out from the floor, pointing a bloody finger at me. There is the traitor. The Alpha's whore. A low, dangerous growl rumbled through the hall. It came from Cade. It was a sound so full of killing intent that several pack members physically recoiled. Riker, Cade said, his voice deadly calm, his eyes never leaving mine. If he speaks again, you have my permission to cut out his tongue. Riker placed his boot on Gideon's hand, earning a muffled scream. Cade started walking toward me. He moved slowly, deliberately, the entire pack watching in stunned silence as their terrifying, blood-soaked alpha crossed the hall. He wasn't walking toward a prisoner. He was walking toward a queen. He stopped in front of me. He was so tall, he blocked out the rest of the room. He was covered in his enemy's blood. He was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. And he was my mate. You were not supposed to be here, he whispered, his voice rough. You were supposed to be safe. You were done hiding, I whispered back, my voice shaking but holding steady. So am I. I raised a trembling hand. The pack watched. I laid my palm flat on his chest, right over his heart. I felt the wild, frantic beat beneath my skin. His skin was hot, feverish. His eyes searched mine. He was looking for fear. He was looking for repulsion. I didn't flinch. I just looked back at him, seeing the man who had kissed me, the alpha who had shielded me, the wolf who had fought for me. I saw all of him. I love you, I thought, the words so loud in my head I was sure he could hear them. You are a monster. But you are my monster. A low sound, half groan, half purr, rumbled in his chest. His wolf was acknowledging me. He covered my hand with his own, his large, calloused, bloody hand pressing mine against his heart. He held me there, claiming me, binding me to him in front of the entire pack. She is not a traitor, Cade said, his voice booming through the hall, though he never looked away from me. She is Anara. Of the Silvermoon pack. She is a healer. She is an Omega. He paused, and his grip on my hand tightened. And she is my mate. A wave of shock rippled through the crowd. Whispers erupted. A wolfless Luna? From the old pack? He broke his own law for her? Silence. Cade roared. The hall fell dead quiet. I broke no law, he snarled, his eyes scanning the crowd, challenging anyone to defy him. My law is absolute. There will be no split loyalties. And my mate's loyalty is to me, as mine is to her. She is not Silvermoon. She is not Shadowclaw. She is mine. And I am hers. He turned back to me, his expression softening, his wolfish gaze drinking me in. She is my heart, he said, his voice suddenly quiet, but it carried in the silent hall. And she is my strength, not my weakness. He looked at Gideon, still bleeding on the floor. This, he gestured to the broken man, is what happens to those who threaten my pack. And this, he looked back at me, his gaze full of a burning, possessive love, is what happens to those who threaten my Luna. He leaned down and kissed me. In front of the entire pack, in front of his enemies, in the middle of a blood-stained hall, Alpha Cade kissed me. It was not the angry kiss from the den. It was not the tender kiss from the bunker. This was a kiss of fealty. A kiss of absolute possession. It was a public, undeniable claim. He was sealing our bond, his power, and my place at his side, all in one movement. I melted against him, my hands clinging to his chest. The bond between us flared, a supernova of light and heat. The pack could feel it. I heard them gasp as the power of a fated mate bond, finally accepted, washed over the hall. It was a wave of pure dominance, of protection, of rightness. When he finally pulled back, he kept one arm locked around my waist, holding me against his side. He turned with me to face the pack. United. Gideon, Cade said, his voice calm. Riker hauled the former beta to his knees. You are guilty of treason, Cade said, his voice flat. You are guilty of attacking your alpha. And you are guilty of threatening your Luna. The punishment is death. Gideon spat a bloody curse on the floor. Cade drew the long, silver-edged combat knife from his boot. The hall was silent. He held the knife out to me. My blood ran cold. Cade, no. He threatened you, my love, Cade said, his voice gentle, but his eyes were hard as steel. By our most ancient law, the Luna has the right of vengeance. The pack watched. This was my test. My final, bloody test. Was I a weak, trembling Omega? Or was I the mate to the ruthless Alpha? I looked at Gideon. He was the man who had sent an assassin to kill me in the dark. He had called me a whore. He had tried to destroy my mate. My hand did not tremble. I took the knife from Cade. The hilt was heavy, warm from his body. I walked toward Gideon. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with shock, and then, finally, with fear. I stood over him. I could feel the eyes of hundreds of wolves on me. I could feel Cade's pride, a warm, steady presence at my back. I was Anara, the healer. My hands were made to save, not to kill. I looked at Gideon, at the blood pouring from his side. And I saw, not a monster. Just a broken, bitter man. "You're a traitor," I said, my voice clear and strong. It didn't waver. "And you have threatened this pack. But you will not make a killer of your Luna." I turned my back on him. I walked back to Cade and held out the knife. "He is not worth the blood on my hands," I said. "He is not worth my anger. Your law is death. But my law is life. I am a healer." I looked at the pack. And this pack is sick. It is bleeding. It does not need more death. It needs to heal. Cade stared at me, his expression unreadable. I had defied him. In public. A slow smile spread across his face. It was the first real smile I had ever seen from him. It transformed his harsh face, made him devastatingly handsome. He took the knife from me. "You heard your Luna," he said to the pack. "She has spoken. She grants him life." He turned to Gideon, his smile vanishing. "But I am not so merciful. You will not die. You will be banished. Stripped of your name, of your wolf. You will be in exile. You will walk out of these lands and never return. And you will tell every wolf you meet that the Shadowclaw pack is stronger than ever. And that our Luna is merciful. But her alpha," his eyes flashed, "is not." He nodded to Riker. "Take him. And clean this mess up." Riker, his face full of a new, profound respect, nodded. "Yes, Alpha. Yes, Luna." He and his men dragged Gideon and the bodies away. The pack began to disperse, the tension broken, replaced by a stunned, buzzing awe. They were looking at me with a new understanding. I was not the Alpha's weakness. I was the pack's balance. When we were finally alone in the massive, bloody hall, Cade turned to me. The sun was beginning to rise, casting bright, warm daylight through the high windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. He reached out and gently brushed a smudge of blood from my cheek with his thumb. "You are magnificent," he whispered, his voice full of a raw emotion I had never heard. "And you," I whispered back, "are covered in blood." He laughed, a real, deep, joyful laugh that echoed in the hall. He pulled me against his chest, holding me tight. "I love you, Anara," he said, his voice thick, burying his face in my hair. "I love you. I think I have from the moment I saw you in that clinic. I was just too blind to see it. I love you, Cade," I sobbed, the words finally breaking free. "I love you." He held me, and for the first time, there were no secrets. No laws. No shadows. There was just us. The Alpha and his mate. The wolf and his healer. We were not perfect. We were a conqueror and his captive. We were a monster and his match. But we were whole. Epilogue. 1 year later, the main hall was not filled with blood. It was filled with sunlight. The bright, warm daylight Cade had once hidden from now streamed through the high windows, illuminating a pack that was thriving. I sat in a high-backed chair, not next to Cade's throne, but in a new one that matched his, placed at his side. He sat beside me, his hand resting on my thigh, a casual, possessive touch that still sent shivers down my spine. We were listening to Riker, now his official, loyal beta, give a report on the new trade alliance with the coastal packs. "Alpha Liam of the Coastals sends his compliments," Luna, Riker said, giving me a respectful nod. He says our pack's medical supplies are the finest he's ever seen. Your cultivation of the Silver Moon herbs has doubled our trading power. I smiled. Please send Alpha Liam my thanks, Riker. And remind him he's late on his last shipment of fish oil. Riker grinned. Yes, Luna. After the brutal night of Gideon's defeat, the pack had accepted me. It hadn't been easy. There were whispers. But Cade had been unmovable. He presented me as his equal. He gave me back my clinic. I became the pack's healer again, not just for the old Silver Moon survivors, but for his own Shadowclaw warriors. I had healed them. I had mended their broken bones and stitched their wounds. And in doing so, I had stitched the two fractured halves of our pack together. Cade was their strength. I was their balance. He was the wolf. I was the heart. After the meeting, Cade and I walked in the gardens. I had replanted them, and they were full of the herbs I used for my healing. You're frowning, Cade murmured, his arms sliding around my waist, pulling me against his side. Riker's report was good. It was, I agreed, leaning my head on his shoulder. We fit together perfectly. I was just thinking about Gideon. Cade tensed. Why? We haven't heard a whisper from him in a year. He's a ghost. I know. I hope he found peace, I said quietly. Cade stopped walking. He turned me to face him, his gray eyes searching mine. After everything he did? After he tried to kill us both? You hope he found peace. He was a broken, bitter man, Cade. He lost everything. Just like I did. I hope he found a way to heal. Cade stared at me for a long moment, and his expression was one of such profound love, it still made my knees weak. This, he said, tapping his finger over my heart. This is why you're my Luna. I am the fire that burns the world down. You are the one who teaches it how to grow back. You're a poet now? I teased, looping my arms around his neck. Only for you, he growled, and he leaned in to kiss me, a slow, deep, lazy kiss that was no longer angry or desperate or claiming. It was just home. The bond between us was a steady, warm presence, a constant comfort. He was my alpha. I was his wolfless, barren omega. And we were, finally, perfectly complete. Wow, what a journey! From a terrified prisoner to a powerful Luna. What did you all think of Anara's story? What was your favorite part? Was it that first, tense moment in the den when Cade hid her from the assassin? Or was it the brutal, primal way he kissed her after? What about when he finally took her to the bunker and admitted she wasn't his weakness, but his strength? Let me know in the comments. I love reading what you think. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. My channel is still young and hoping to grow, and every single subscription is a huge support. It truly means the world to me. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you all in the next interesting story.